Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Ecomm Engine. Today we're going to be talking less guessing and more selling with none other than Fran from Conjura. Fran, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Nathan. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Fran, before we dive in, Conjura has always been a tool that's fascinated me in terms of the focus on data and insights. And I think one of my frustrations with brands is more often than not, we collect the data, but we don't do enough with it. But before we dive into some of the questions we've got today, and a reminder to anyone listening, please do ask questions as we go, and I'll get to as many as I can. Before we dive into all of that, Fran, just tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and then the story of Conjura.
Sure. So I have a kind of unusual background, Nathan. I started off in pharma, and I was working in the data side of pharma. And for me, it's so different to retail. It was slow moving decisions. It was patent protected. Competition was small, and I found it quite boring. So once I kind of got a taste of retail and e-commerce, particularly, I sort of ran towards that because it's fast moving, it's exciting, it's innovative. And yeah, I suppose it was back in 2016, 2017, I jumped from pharma into eCom. And that kind of coincided with the creation of Conjura, and never looked back since. Conjura started out as more of a general data platform. I co-founded it with Aidan Corbett, a good friend of mine. And really, our mission was to, help small to medium retail businesses or e-commerce businesses understand their businesses better. And then we've evolved the product over the last few years as time has gone by, and we've understood what problems, e-commerce retailers have.
Let's just touch upon that point, Fran, in terms of problems that retailers have. I mean, typically for us, there's 2 or 3 levers we'll look at, whether it be conversion rate or average order value or new sessions, etc. For yourselves, what problems would you say you're uncovering as you're getting more and more data and meeting more and more brands? Are there certain common threads where you're like, blimey, most brands are falling in the same trap?
Yeah, so I think the problems have probably changed a little bit with obviously the ecosystem evolving. So, a few years ago, brands were wondering how to grow faster. Obviously, more recently, brands are really focused on, are they profitable? How can they get more profitable? And I think the greatest thing for me is I didn't realize how many brands out there don't really know whether they're making money or not, or particularly what parts of the business are making money. And often it takes them a good few months post, selling products to realize whether the whole thing was worthwhile or not. So that sort of opened my eyes. The lack of visibility at that sort of core level is probably the biggest thing that surprised me over the last couple of years. So we've definitely focused more on, understanding profitability, how to grow, be more profitable, and that uncovering all the sort of detail, that's deep in the business. So
Yes.
that's how Conjura has evolved.
I guess that links us nicely to the topic of today's session, right? Which is around less getting, more selling. And I mean, it staggers me how many brands are like, we want growth. And you go, okay, what does growth look like? I don't know, 50%. Why 50%? It just sounds decent. And you're like, come on, like, where's the plan here?
Yeah.
There's no kind of like conversion rate needs to go to this, or average order value to this, or new sessions to this, or repeat purchase to this. It's very much just, let's just get bigger. And so I guess my first question to you is really the topic of today, less guessing, more selling. What does that mean to you in the context of D2C brands?
For us in Conjura, I think it really means understanding contribution margin at a very deep level. So, brands, what we've learned is that brands are selling lots of different products, and they don't really understand whether some products are profitable, all products are profitable, all customers are profitable. So it's kind of the unpacking the business and just figuring it all out. That's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to say, hey, these products are really good, these products are really bad, or only average. These customers are really good, and just laser focusing on the best parts of the business so they can grow those. and
Interesting.
just not guessing, I suppose, not assuming everything is equal, every product is equal, every customer is equal.
Fran, do you go as deep at a variant level or is it product level in terms of profitability of the product? I mean, I appreciate the margins on a red t-shirt versus a yellow t-shirt are probably similar, but at the same time, sometimes you may see variants in terms of sizes or widths or depths or whatever it's going to be that then has an impact. Can you go as granular as variant level with Conjura? Is it initially product level?
No, totally, all the way down to variant level. And what I guess what we figured out, Nathan, in our eyes, I suppose the advertising has evolved, digital advertising has evolved over the last couple of years where, it's become more black boxy and brands are giving the ad platforms, Google, Meta, TikTok, just product catalogs, product feeds, and they're doing your own sort of experimentation and optimization. And you just have to accept what happens. You've, I suppose, fewer dials to turn. And what we kind of figured out quickly is if you do get into the detail, you can see that you probably should not put all your products into those feeds and take some out and potentially separate them out and have some products with a bigger budget than other products. So because it's quite black boxy now, you've got to get smarter and not just kind of plug everything in and hope for the best. So that's that's kind of what we've discovered as we've got deep into this problem. And yeah, we've been trying to help all our customers with that ever since.
Perfect. And I think one of the themes or threads you talked about there is contribution margin. And I appreciate that we're going to have a whole depth of experience when it comes to retailers listening. So I guess building on that, what does contribution margin actually mean, Fran? In simple terms, for someone listening, what is contribution margin?
Sure. So I suppose a lot of retailers look at revenue and then they look at gross profit, which is essentially revenue minus the cost of the product. The next level is contribution margin, which is the revenue minus the cost of the product minus other costs such as shipping, payment costs, and also the ad spend. So what we focus on a lot is that ad spend is actually quite easy to find if you go look for it at that SKU level or even at the variant level, because a lot of the ad platforms bring you onto the product pages. So really this contribution margin is as close as you can get to net profit without your general overheads in a business. And it's a kind of, I suppose, what it's almost like marketing meets accounting, CFOs meet CMOs.
Yeah.
And what we're finding is, I suppose, a lot of e-commerce directors or CMOs are getting more financially literate now, and they're focusing in on metrics like this, which is really a true profitability metric.
And question the contribution margin. Is there a standard across the industry that you would say people should benchmark them against? And I'll come back to benchmarking because I think from my experience with Conjura, that's something you've done fantastically well for brands, is allowed them to benchmark. But in terms of contribution margin in isolation, is there a holy grail for what brands should be looking for? Or is it very different sector to sector?
It's probably different because some customers will put in more costs than others into it. So, some customers might put in handling costs in a warehouse and really put as many costs as they can against a particular product, and others don't go that far. So, we do, as you mentioned, and I can talk about in a while, we do focus on benchmarking a lot in Conjura, as there is a lot of great data out there, but sometimes, contribution margin can be a little bit tricky because, one brand might have 10 different costs taken off the revenue and others might have 5, so you got to be careful, I suppose, if you're comparing yourself against somebody else and make sure you've all the same costs that they have stripped out of the revenue.
I guess that's an interesting point, is as more brands, and particularly director of eCom, head of marketing, CMO, whatever it's going to be, they're going to be focusing on certain KPIs and goals, etc. Contribution margin, I think it's fair to say, is something that we're advocating that they should include in that mix in terms of reporting against. I guess the question is at what cost? And so contribution margin versus growth, both metrics that they're probably going after, yet one may have significant impacts on the other. How do you think brands can try and strike that balance between actually the board have told me I need to double this business versus I know that for the health and longevity of the business, I need to have a tight handle on my contribution margin?
Yeah, so I suppose, Nathan, 2 years ago, a lot of our customers had investment from angel investors or VCs, and they were able to operate, essentially with a payback period. So what I mean by that is they could sell products to customers at a loss, knowing that this customer might repeat purchase and they'll get that money back in 6 months or 12 months. I don't think many brands, unless they're unless they're backed by investors, can really do that anymore. So, I think you kind of have to grow profitably, and so you're sort of really constrained by that ability to make a profit on essentially every sale now. So yeah, I don't see many brands, I don't see any of our customers losing money on customers, with the thought of gaining it back over 12 months or 24 months, because I just think those days are not happening at the moment anyway.
Yeah. And so again, just building on that, I don't want this to be solely about contribution margin, but I can't stress the importance enough to people listening of this metric being involved in your kind of reporting dashboards, etc.
Yeah.
For yourself, I mean, are you seeing any kind of typical trends or common pitfalls or mistakes within the e-commerce ecosystem that you think, blimey, if they just had a better handle on contribution margin, these issues wouldn't need to exist?
Yeah, so the biggest mistake we're seeing is that, businesses, particularly with a lot of products or a lot of SKUs, will plug all those SKUs into ad platforms and not realize that, they're actually losing money on quite a number of those SKUs from an advertising spend point of view. So the advertising spend makes the contribution margin negative, and they don't know. So you could have 20,000 products pumped into Performance Max, and 3,000 of those are actually loss making. So you need to uncover that pretty quickly and stop putting those products, like stop letting Google experiment on advertising those products, because it's just not working. So what we found is, you either need to take those products out of the feed, or you need to change the pricing on the product. And that's probably the biggest blind spot for customers that join Conjura, is they don't know really about those products that are loss making, and they need to do something about them.
Question, Fran, and building on that, let's say you've got a 15,000, maybe a 20,000 product SKU count. You realize that 3,000 of them are making a loss directly on through Google. Is it a case of taking them out the feed? Is it a case of trying them on another channel? Is it a case of stop doing them entirely? How severe is it, and where would you start? So let's say someone does use Conjura, they do the research, and they go, blimey, 5,000 of these products are losing me money. Day one, I'm going to do this, but then eventually I'm going to do that. Where do people start? Is it remove them from the feed? Is it give them another chance on another channel? Is it just stop selling them?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great question, Nathan. And so I suppose every business has its own story. And, I will say we do look at assisted conversions as well, by the way. So we're not just measuring the sale of that product. We are looking at products that bring people onto your website and buy something else. So, there's always nuance to this. Yeah, I think, look, you may have other channels working really well. You may have affiliates working well, which some of our customers have really optimized well, and that could be a good place to push those products. So I wouldn't necessarily say switch everything off and don't try anything else. There's lots of ways to push products, and I suppose the social platforms are obviously a really good conversation starter, because for us, some of our customers do a lot of, I suppose, brand advertising on social platforms that bring you to homepages, and others do a lot of product advertising to bring you to product pages. Very different strategies. So you need to kind of unpack that as well and see what your strategy is, because if you're driving people to product pages on the social platforms, then you may need to look at that as well, and that's where we help customers with contribution margin on the social platforms. So yeah, you could be, as I said, you could be changing strategy and pushing the products in other channels, or you may be just slightly pulling back from pushing them altogether.
Fran, sorry to go super geeky here, but you've
Yeah.
got me thinking. Let's say that I've got product catalogs across social and Google and perhaps other channels, whether it be marketplace or something else. How much data can be pulled into Conjura? And then can you then split it back out granularly to say, oh, actually, if I do it on Google, I'm making money. If I do it on social, I'm losing money, therefore might turn it off. I'm just thinking kind of, let's say a more advanced merchant that's kind of Conjura is starting to, in my eyes, provide you that single source of truth that goes, you know what,
Mm.
product mix is absolutely fine, but actually, in terms of go to market, that one doesn't have a place on social. If it does, we're going to have to look at contribution margin because that isn't working. Versus that product, same product, but on Google all day long, cracking product. Can you go that granular?
Totally. Yeah. So totally. So it's probably what we pride ourselves on. We really do track everything down to the most, granular level, or the most detail that we can actually get from the APIs. So, and this is where I suppose brands need to be a bit careful. Some of the analytics products out there don't go as deep as we do, and they sort of make guesses on, what the ad spend is at a product level. They might sort of divide it up in the same ratio as orders, things like that, which is just not right. But for us, we'll go to every single product page click that comes from ad platforms and pick the cost out. And like you said, Nathan, one thing that I found very interesting is our bigger brands, our bigger customers, in terms of revenue, they actually tend to drive on the social platforms, they drive more clicks to product pages. And the smaller brands tend to drive clicks to home, more to home pages.
Yeah.
And the product pages are actually allow you to, really attribute what products are kind of have higher contribution margin. Whereas if everyone is going to your homepage, it's harder to kind of find out what's going on. So the bigger brands are probably they set their ads up in a better way, I suppose, to track the detail and the contribution margin. So I found that was quite interesting. And they probably find out more of the truth when they're doing that.
We have so many questions coming off the back of this. In terms of size of brand, you touched upon there different sizes of brand. Is there a typical size of brand that gets the most value from Conjura? For example, Mrs. Miggins, for whatever reason, is deciding that she's going to launch a product business on Shopify. She's done 20 grand in her first year. Absolutely fantastic. At what point is she ready for Conjura?
Yeah, it's a great question as well. Like, I think, look, we've got quite a broad spectrum of customers, anywhere from, probably 500K revenue up to 100 million of revenue. Definitely say it gets more complex when you've got more products, and therefore arguably we add more value the more products you have. But customers that even relatively small number of products still get a lot of value from us because we're showing them the level of detail that they haven't seen before. But yeah, like I do think we have quite a good mix of customers, and even the verticals they're in can be, anything from obviously the normal, beauty, fashion, health, food, and then lots of kind of obscure brands as well that sell some interesting stuff.
So sector agnostic, the more
Yeah.
skewed, the better.
Yes.
Interesting. In terms of pricing, and I'm conscious to not have this be a sales pitch, but at the same time, I'm kind of selfishly curious. How does it vary between brand doing 500,000, fairly limited SKU count, versus brand doing 20 million with a complex SKU count? How does the pricing vary? Is it based on size of catalog? Is it based on page views? Is it based on just a set monthly fee? How does it work?
Yeah, it's we've definitely evolved our pricing over time, and we try and charge a small percentage of the uplift and value that we give. At the moment, our pricing is kind of anchored towards turnover. So generally, the bigger businesses everybody gets the same features, but the bigger you are, the slightly more you pay.
Yeah.
And in our experience, the bigger companies are getting more return, an absolute profit from Conjura than the smaller ones, just because there's more revenue at play. So, we're confident that we're delivering at least 10 times the value that we charge. So that's what we aim to do in Conjura.
Nice.
Yeah.
And just question off the back of that, in terms of that percentage uplift, do you envisage the model shifting to purely percentage of uplift, or do you think there'll always be base fee and percentage of uplift?
I percentage uplift is something that is tricky to enforce because there could be lots of other factors happening in the business, and you could end up getting into a slight fun fight with brands about who's actually contributed to the growth.
Yeah.
So we probably never, we'll guide ourselves on the uplift, but we'll probably always have some sort of, SKU list or turnover based pricing. But we'll still kind of monitor our customers and show new customers what return our existing customers are getting, because we are obviously in the data and we can see the value that we're bringing before Conjura and after Conjura in terms of contribution margin changes, etc.
It's clear to me that contribution margin, I'm loving this conversation and learning so much myself. Yeah. So hopefully listeners are finding the same. But contribution margin is something that really stands out as something that if you want to understand that, Conjura is certainly a place to go. Are there other KPIs, metrics, whatever it's going to be, that actually Conjura really helps brands to understand outside of contribution margin?
Absolutely, yeah. So look, we started out as a general analytics tool. So we surface insights across customer data, marketing. We do all the normal lifetime value, customer repeat rate, cohort analysis, return on ad spend, all that kind of stuff. And one sort of, I think, interesting slant, we look at lifetime value of a customer by the product of first purchase and repeat purchase rate by product of first purchase. So looking at the lens of the business through product as well as customer, I think is quite interesting. But our learnings, I suppose, from broader analytics tools, and there are plenty of them in the market, are kind of great in one way, but you do need to probably specialize and be known to do something really well. So we've really focused in on this area because we think it's one of the better areas for businesses to actually grow their profits. So. But as I said, we do cover lots more in our product.
Okay, and a question around benchmarking, because that to me is how I came across the Conjura product. Wasn't contribution margins, was around brands wanting to see what other brands were doing in the space and to try and understand it. Now, I understand the argument about all things need to be equal before you start comparing, but tell us a little bit more about the benchmarking data that you guys are able to produce at Conjura, because that for me I found really impressive.
Yeah, so we've kind of an interesting past in that Conjura birthed a product called Quickfire, which is a lending product, and in those days we were actually analyzing businesses to make a credit decision, to decide, are we going to give this e-commerce business a loan or not. And since then, we've also done analysis for investors. So a lot of investors in eCom brands were using our platform to make investment decisions. And they were really keen in using benchmarks because it's what they do. Investors all the time, they're looking to see how is this company doing compared to all the other companies similar to it. So benchmarks became really important for us on the investment side of what we were doing. And we're trying to bring them into operators and say to operators, you need to understand relative performance. So like, where are you weak? Are you weak on the conversion rate side, on the advertising side, on the blend of revenue, on the channel mix? And probably found it a little bit trickier with operators in that a lot of education is needed on benchmarks. But it is getting better, Nathan. I think, Shopify brought benchmarks into their products. A lot of other analytics tools have brought benchmarks in. And the beauty of retail from me is that most retailers or most e-commerce brands are using the same tech stack. So if you're selling shoes in Brazil or selling shoes in, London, you should be able to have the exact same data and look like for like across that. So, it's really set up for high volume comparison, thousands and thousands and thousands of brands, and you can compare across all of them, which is great. I think that's really powerful. But and we've always really valued benchmarks, and we've kind of tried to portray that over to brands and operators, but it's been a bit slower than it has been on the investment side, I'd say, to really appreciate the value. But it is pretty much a sign of where you're strong and where you're weak as a brand. If you look at all 50 KPIs that you have across, the benchmarking that we perform, you get a good view on how you're strong and how you're weak. And I think that's a really valuable thing to get.
Yeah, I think certainly in our world, the land of agencies, we've always had this kind of agency benchmarking that the various agency bodies put together, and they survey their customer base, and it's fascinating just to see actually that bit where we're kind of on the right path, that bit we're a million miles off, and I think there's room we need to change. And it goes back to this data to inform decision making, and that's something I'm really encouraged to see, is that more and more brands are allowing data to make decisions. Can you believe it? The dog has decided to stay outside. Let me just shut the door shortly. But while I'm doing that, I just want to know for you, in terms of trends in the industry, where do you see the industry, particularly around data, heading in 2024?
So, yeah, two things. I think e-commerce is becoming more fragmented, which, is almost following the Asian, like the Chinese model, where you're starting to sell, brands starting to sell on TikTok store, you're starting to sell through, buy with Prime. So even a Shopify brand will be selling through Amazon in a kind of indirect way. So there's definitely getting trickier for brands to follow what's going on as you start selling in more places. So that's definitely a trend. We have to broaden our connector list, which we are doing. So that's one thing. And I think the other one is a bit more longer term, maybe not, you won't see as much this year, but I think operational analytics, data and operations is going to be more popular, and it's the last place in eCom to really, where data is optimizing performance, because the data sources in operations are so fragmented. So like, your warehouse management systems, there's so many of them out there, 3PL providers, so many of them. It's much harder for businesses like Conjura to connect to all these different systems. But you do have companies out there aggregating all of those systems together, which means that somebody like, Conjura can connect into the aggregated system, and then we'll have much more visibility. So I think, optimizing how your stock is stored and how it's delivered and all that post-transaction side almost is definitely coming down the road soon enough. I think that'll be quite exciting.
Frank, question for you in terms of today, and just recapping, I'm conscious of time. We've probably got another 3 or 4 weeks together, and I can't thank you enough for all the value you've shared with us and the audience today. But if people are going to take 2 or 3 things from today, I mean, one for me would be, for God's sake, start to understand your contribution margin. That is a real thing that stands out. But what are the other 2 or 3 things you hope brands listening today will take from today's session?
So I think, you need to think twice about plugging all of your product feed into the ad platforms. I think you need to be smarter than that. You need to sort of refine your product catalog that you actually plug in. And then the third one is think about how you structure your social accounts and how many of the campaigns and ads bring customers to, or bring kind of prospects onto product pages versus, home pages. So I think there are key decisions that really will have ripple effects down the line on how you understand the performance. So, as ad platforms get a bit harder to figure out what's going on, you need to sort of work around that. So they'd be my 2 other key pieces.
Thank you. And in terms of, if people want to find out more about Conjura, Fran, or what you guys do, or get involved in some of the benchmarks, etc., how do they get started?
Sure. So, just go straight onto our website, conjura.com. We allow any brand to sign up for free and have a trial of our product. We also are, on all the social channels, so anybody can reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. So yeah, hopefully we're easy to find and easy to talk to.
Perfect. Folks, thank you for joining us today. Fran, massive pleasure to chat to you today. I can't recommend Conjura highly enough if you're looking to benchmark your data, and particularly if you want to finally understand contribution margin and what products are working for you and what products aren't, then check these guys out. But for now, thank you for tuning into the latest episode of eCom Engine. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, Fran.
Thanks a lot, Nathan. Take care. Thanks very much.